podcast starts.
Hello, dear listener, and welcome to the first episode of the second series of And Now the Podcast Starts. Now, if you've never heard this podcast before, firstly, welcome. On this podcast, we talk about horror, sometimes we talk about other things, and sometimes we swear. If you have been listening to this podcast in the past, well, welcome back. Thanks for sticking with us. And you'll probably recognise that I used to have a rather longer spiel, which I'd say at the start of every episode, but that basically sums it up. We talk about horror, we talk about other things, and we swear. I am TD Velasquez, but you, dear listener, can call me Dan. And there are a number of other hosts on this show. It's just me for right now, but later in this episode, you'll hear the delightful Ian Winston. Our other co-hosts, Kirsty Warrow, Dr. Stella Gaynor, and Howard Whittock, will be reappearing in subsequent weeks. I like to think that the start of the new series, our second series, is a little bit like the second season of a popular drama show on TV, where for the first few episodes they'll deal with individual characters leading their separate existences before the whole cast is reunited a little bit later on into the run, just to keep you all in suspense, you know. Now, the reason we've chosen this moment to relaunch the podcast is, well, generally because it's nearly October, and specifically because it's nearly Grimmfest, and that's going to be the theme of this episode. Myself and Ian will be interviewing some of the filmmakers behind some of the movies to be included in this year's Grimmfest. We've covered the previous two festivals on this podcast. If you go back along our podcast feed, you'll find those episodes. We're big fans of the festival, and I'll give more details in a moment of what's coming up. So we've had the summer off and most of the spring, and we're actually relaunching as intended at this time of year, but it's ended up being quite a fraught time for a lot of us. There's quite a lot of family health issues being experienced by a number of the hosts at the moment. On top of that, Kirsty's just moved house, and Stella's just written a book. So basically we've all had lots of things taking up our attention and draining our energy at the moment. But, you know, we've stuck with our intention and the podcast is relaunching on schedule. We have been recording material all through the spring and summer, so there's plenty of stuff to come out that's already in the can. But I shall aim that at least some of us are also here every week to comment on news in the horror world and to catch up with your good self. We've also been building our Patreon page over the summer. This is at patreon.com/andnowpodcast. For a modest sum, anybody who signs up to this page can hear material that we record in advance, weeks, sometimes months in advance of its release on the podcast feed, and sometimes special exclusive material as well. If you go to that page currently, which will be linked in the show notes for this episode, you'll find several items already there. So there's a number of installments of The Bag of Death, myself and Howard's unplanned dive into a selection of any and all English language horror films that we've seen. We like to do that every week. That feature will be coming back in upcoming episodes, but you can listen to it right now if you go to the Patreon page. Also, there's an episode about dog soldiers that Kirsty, Stella and Ian and I all recorded, and there is the final instalment for the moment in our long-running series of Halloween franchise retrospective reviews, where myself and Howard and Ian and Spider Dan, our semi-regular Halloween collaborator, discuss the 2018 Halloween film. Of course, there is going to be a new Halloween film released in just a few weeks, and we'll be reviewing that too. So this item won't be our final Halloween review for very long, but as it stands, it is, and it's there to listen to. There's also an exclusive item on the Patreon feed at the moment, which is, or rather, it's not there yet, but it will be in the very near future. It's a video Zoom interview with the renowned horror author Simon Clarke. He and I spend some very enjoyable time discussing the Quatermass stories as written by Nigel Neal, and specifically the scripts and the novelisation that he wrote based on those stories, which were published and are available to read. Some of that material is going to find its way into upcoming episodes of the regular podcast, but not all of it. So that's a really good thing to go seek out. And as we continue to move forward and record new things, more items are going to be constantly added to the Patreon feed, and you'll be able to hear things weeks, perhaps months in advance, if you keep an eye on that. Hopefully it will be a nice incentive to contribute something to our ongoing upkeep of this podcast. Anyway, that's enough about that. It's time to get to the main event of this episode. So, in a couple of weeks, on the 7th of October to the 10th, it's going to be Grimmfest, Manchester's great annual horror film festival. Well, I say annual horror film festival, it is, but it's also several events throughout the year as well, smaller events, screenings. Recently they did a great Wes Craven Day event where they showed loads of Wes Craven films in one day at the Stockport Plaza. There's loads of great stuff they organise, but the main thing that they do is the 4-day festival every year. Now, last year we covered it, even though technically it didn't happen live. It was an online event due to the COVID lockdown. Everybody just enjoyed it from their homes, but we were still involved in covering it and interviewing the filmmakers and reviewing a lot of the movies. This year it's returning to a live theatrical footing, but it's also a hybrid festival. If you want to go along to the actual festival in person, then it's from the 7th to the 10th of October at the Odeon Great Northern in Manchester, which has been Grimmfest's home for a number of years now. However, if you're still a little bit wary of mixing with large numbers of people, like I am, to be honest, then a week later, on the 14th to the 17th of October, the same programme of movies will be available as an online event, and you can get tickets and access to either of these things through the Grimmfest website. I'll put a link to that website in the show notes. In this episode of our podcast, we're going to be covering 3 of the films that are going to be included in the festival this year. Ian and I have interviewed a number of the filmmakers, both separately and together, and you're going to hear from the teams behind 3 specific movies. So then, to the first of our feature interviews for this episode. This interview is going to be about an American film called Night at the Eagle Inn. Now, I have to be honest and say I haven't seen it, but Ian did, and Ian had the pleasure of interviewing via Zoom the co-writer and director Eric Blomquist and the 2 main stars of the movie, Amelia Dudley and Taylor Turner. So I'll hand over to those to talk about the film, and first, to get you in the mood, here's a clip from the movie.
So congratulations on Night at Eagle Inn. Just to sort of go back to the beginning then, how did it come about? You guys have worked together, the three of you, on Cobblestone Corridor, I see, from having a good look on IMDb. Was that the show you kind of met on?
It was, yeah. We met on that coming up on 6 years now, guys.
Yeah.
Anyway, and we've been pals ever since, and we like to work together and like to, be creative together. And in the middle of the pandemic, we were trying to make these, and still are. I mean, I'm going to carry this torch forward. Be as creative as we can, even when we don't have many resources at our disposal. So we had access to this amazing location, and it was an opportunity for us to all work together again. So it was written around sensibilities and desires to showcase in unique and exciting ways, and in a genre that we were all kind of drawn to, and we kind of built the whole thing together, and to be creative in the midst of the happenings.
Yeah.
Or lack.
Yeah, no, it's cool. Just for, because obviously this is it's a podcast, but it'll be primarily for UK people. Where does Cobblestone Corridor go out, or where did it go out? Was it
It was on PBS. It came out on the Connecticut PBS, and then it got syndicated to hundreds of PBSs around the country. And I don't know if people across the ponds know. PBS, I guess, is the closest thing we have to an American equivalent to BBC.
Yeah.
So it's ish that.
Yeah. Some Americans are always surprised when they go, "What's your PBS?" And you go, "It's the BBC." It's PBS, but huge, and it was your main broadcaster. But it's So I was, one of the first things I was going to ask was the location looks great. I mean, whereabouts is that? Was it really as cold as it looked?
It was colder.
Were you guys acting cold?
No, it was colder. Taylor in particular had the worst of it in a scene that we were doing in the bar at about the halfway point in the movie. We were inside, the heat had been broken, and it was legitimately 39 degrees in the room. And Bo, who's playing Hunky Maintenance Man, is in short sleeves, and everyone's just like between takes going like, fuck, action. Hey, how's it going? Yeah. You know what I mean?
So you're like taking off big coats in between takes.
I didn't bring a warm enough coat. I definitely fucked myself on that one.
I remember we said this on the way up. You're like, I don't know why I didn't bring a warmer coat. But
I didn't realize how cold it would be until I got there. But they had the sauna in the hotel was still operational, and it was like right down the hall. So in between setups, we were like sprinting into the sauna and like cramming in there for like 5 minutes at a time. And like, all right, let's do the next one. So we would like run out. Like,
could you not write a sauna scene?
Oh, very briefly, we have a quick thing. But that was like the discovery of the thing, right? Was that you or Peter who discovered that it was working? Taylor, was it you or Peter who figured out?
I think it was Peter, or the gaffer.
He comes back to set looking fresh, and he's like, guys, the sauna's working down the way.
He's like, bro, you know the sauna's working, right, bro? And we were like, what?
It's like throwing water on a hot coal.
It's a great impression.
That's what he sounds like. He's from California. He's like, hey man, yeah. So we're gonna do this. I'm in the sauna. Yeah, he's great. Love Peter.
Yeah. So I mean, where in the States was it? I take it was the States. It wasn't.
It was in Vermont, northeast.
Oh right.
Very New England, near the Canadian border.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, that's Bernie Sanders' country, isn't it? Is it?
Yes,
yes,
it is.
Right.
He cameos in one of the TV. No,
can you imagine?
He was in the sauna.
You know, we tried.
Just him with the mittens inside of the TV.
and the coat. That's how we should have
the extended version.
Yeah, Taylor, he had your coat.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so you basically this came out of I can't believe, because it was a year ago. I watched your movie for Grimmfest last year, and we never quite got together to interview you. I can't believe it's like another festival that's in It's very similar situations. Living on Zoom for our second year. So I mean, this was basically this was a project that you went, right, we're going to make this under lockdown conditions.
Yeah.
With the facilities we've got, with the resources we've got to hand.
Yeah, we really were motivated to. There's this dichotomy because there was, for 6 months of the pandemic, it was recalibrating what it is to exist as an artist without being able to create, which, different people went through different things with that. But then we kind of got re-energized and motivated, and we're like, no, we want to come out of the pandemic with creative projects that we're proud of, that we're doing on our terms. And this was one of those, and that was really freeing and gratifying to be able to do that. So we shot a movie in Vermont in September. The inn was adjacent to it. We toured it, and we ended up writing it around it over the next, month. And Taylor and Amelia were getting little pages as it went, and we were talking about it. And they played twins in the Cobblestone Corridor, and now they're playing a different kind of twin in this movie, a creepy edge. And that was just kind of a fun thing to do. And that's how that came about, is what can we do and what would be fun for us.
Yeah. So Taylor and Amelia, you're not genuinely brother and sister, are you? You've just
no.
We have tried to convince people at bars after the Cobblestone Corridor wrapped. We would meet up, and we convinced, I think, a couple of people here and there that we were twins. Yeah. And we would mess up the story about how old we were, where we were from, because we obviously didn't plan any of it. But we were just yeah, we're twins, and people were like, yeah, I see that. Totally, you guys totally have the
Yeah, people on Cobblestone sometimes would be surprised that we weren't related at all, that we had not met each other before that project. Even though we went to the same school, we didn't know each other before.
Oh right, it's it's weird, and now not very often people get cast as siblings in different separate projects. And now here you are. Yeah. So that
was sort of the fun of it. I was like, guys, want to play twins again? Taylor's like, can I dye my hair? Taylor's like, can I dye my hair blonde? And I'm like, I require it. And then, and then I was like, Amelia, you want to dye your hair black? And she's like, yeah, my agents have been asking me for years. So
I was going to say pictures of you, Amelia.
Give the people what they want.
Do you normally have blonde hair, or was that just
I did for a very long time, and I did for many years. My natural hair color is more on the blonde side of things, but then I liked this, so I've kept it.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I can't believe I'm doing that thing of talking to the woman on the cast about her looks and no one else. But I apologize. No. That was a blonde hair, Taylor.
Came up with Taylor's hair, so we talked about Taylor's looks first.
The blonde, bleach blonde has so much upkeep. I had so many different kinds of shampoo. I got terrible dandruff because the bleach just kills your scalp. And I was like, it looks fucking sick, but it's just not sustainable. And it's such a specific look, whereas I feel like the dark hair is still pretty I think.
Were you a Buffy fan as a child?
What?
There's a little bit of Spike.
Oh, so I'm a bad horror fan. I've only seen
just that sort of Billy Idol thing that sort of went into Spike in Buffy.
Mm-hmm.
You should check him out. It's a compliment. But
I'm taking it as such. Thank you.
yeah. So what? So Eric, we know you for making quite a few horror movies, but you don't just make horror, do you? You're involved in theatre.
Yeah. We all, I think we all have theater roots here, and I think that kind of informs why we work so well together as well. Is there's this kind of, I don't know, rehearsal room kind of play that we bring to everything that we do, and we're all, I don't know, I think we all enjoy. Who's calling me? 1 second, sorry. I erased that in the interview. We all enjoy, sinking into good text and responding and changing things as we go. So I think that's we live on that.
Yeah, because one of the things they often say is a lot of British and Australian and New Zealand actors do really well in Hollywood, etc. because of the theatre being such a big thing. I mean, you spent time in the UK as well, is that right, Eric?
Yeah, I lived there for 3.5 months doing a semester in London. Yeah, which was, I think also informs my sensibilities in ways I probably can't verbalize, but certainly is a formative thing for me.
Yeah. So how much of this was on the page, and how much was an element of improvisation?
There was. I think there is in everything.
Yeah, there were.
It's pretty explicitly scripted, but there's improvisation. I think everything that we do, and Taylor, you can speak to the little parentheticals.
Yeah, we had a couple. I mean, Eric is very much an actor's director and knows how to speak because he has a theater and acting background. We all have sort of a shared language in that sense, and there were plenty of moments in the script where with a lot of like Spencer's little asides, it was just like the line just said like Taylor's specific witticism here about X, Y, or Z. And so then like when we were filming, I would just sort of come up with something and we would workshop it. And we were sort of able to wear some different hats in that sense. Amelia has fight choreography experience. So like for the climax of the movie, she got to step in and sort of like offer her expertise on like how these like more combative moments in the film should work. I'm sure you could like speak to that. And
well, I mean, I'm probably going to sound like a broken record here with coming from that theater background. There's you put a lot of trust in the ensemble of people that you're working with, and there's a certain freedom and sense of exploration that I think comes from having that background, where we were all really finding what this was going to be together, building off of what's on the page to make it feel like a really full and fully realized world. And I think, having the flexibility to do that is what kind of filled in some of those gaps, just having that ability to improvise and explore and really bring ourselves.
And these are the kind of people I like to work with, and it's why we work together so frequently, is because there is that trust. And I love everybody having their moments and time to shine. God, I'm popular today, huh? Okay, moments and time to shine. But I hope you heard my phone ringing. I'm just not saying I'm popular. That's what I meant. Moments.
We heard you, Phil.
Great.
Don't worry.
Great. Well, also sorry about that. Moments and time to shine. But at the end of the day, I like that we are a collective as well, and that there's this give and take and push and pull, and that when we're in performance, the performers and creatives that we're working with are very generous of time and ideas and skill to better what everybody else is doing. And I just think that makes these relationships and these places feel very lived in and authentic, and something that people recognize, and relate to.
Yeah, I think that's why it gets under your skin. It feels like a very lived in real place, and it kind of, with the cold and the fear, it just feel very real. I mean, how much of an art department did you have? In terms of was the hotel ready? It was
pretty plug and it was pretty plug and chug. We put a couple of things up. I had a friend who does prop master, like print up a fake label for Amelia's pills, and we scavenged for some props and stuff before we came up. But a lot of it was like, run down to that room. That comforter works better here. Move these towels to this side, whatever. And we were very fortunate that the inn hadn't been closed for decades. It had been closed for a year or two, or a few years, but they bring it back every so often. So there was stuff there for us, which inspired the writing, inspired the performances, but also allowed us to have the freedom to do this very, very small without it looking tiny.
Yeah, no, it's one of the things you do with low budget is run with what you got and don't overstretch yourself, because it looks. Yeah. I mean, the sort of horror elements you've got in there as well, with the blood and the, what do you call? We call them Stanley knives. What do you call those knives? Is it box knives?
Oh yeah, the box cutter.
Yeah, box cutter. That's right. Yeah, we call them Stanley knives because that's the make. But yeah. Just that horrible scene. I don't want to spoil. It's quite hard to talk about this in the without spoiling it too much, isn't it? Because it's best if most things we just sort of stick with the setup, which is two grown-up twins go to a hotel and shit happens. Without spoiling.
The way we do that, I'll say the way we do that scene, which is approximately the 61.5-minute mark of the movie, was an exercise in ensemble building based on like, we want it to be visceral, but what can we show and how do we show it? So, someone chimes in the idea about an angle, and then Amelia's like, let the arm be like this, and we shoot it like this, and we use the prop in this way. So it really, I'm really happy with how that moment looks. I think it's a unique way of doing that specific gag. Anyway.
I was gonna bring me on to Greg Schreers, who's not an actor I've come across before, but he was. I can almost believe you saying, "Oh, when we got the hotel, there was a guy there who came to the hotel because he doesn't look it on IMDb. He doesn't look like awful and creepy, but he really plays the part really well. I'm sure he's lovely in real life. But what was he like to work with?
A delight.
A delight. So I had worked with him before. Taylor and Bo had worked together. Taylor and Amelia had worked together. Amelia, had you met Bo before this? No?
I had not met Bo or Greg.
Greg was the one who had never met anybody in the cast except for me, because I directed him in a play 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. And he had done something similar, and I was like, we can push this harder. So I brought him into this, and he actually lived nearby in Vermont. He knew that we were shooting something there 2 months ago, and he's like, reminded me that he had a house there. And I said, great, perfect for our small little movie. We'll write a part around you. So we were like, so as we were developing this, we were like, how far can we push this? And he's like, do you want an accent? And I was like, sure. Just throwing
the accent work is so on point.
Let's just throw in a crazy
New England.
Yeah.
Just
I'll let it rise, Mr. Moss.
Taylor's demented Pepper Charm spokesperson line. And when we started doing it, I was like, oh my God, are Taylor and Amelia gonna think it's like too much? And like, because to me it was like perfect. It made so much sense that it was just so like, who the hell is this obvious ass villain? But Taylor and Amelia were like, but that feeds into the way that they approach the scenes, where they're just so knowing about this. They share these glances like, yeah, here's the creepy innkeeper. Like they know, and I think that feeds into their dynamic as well. And Greg is also.
I thought that was really smart. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
No. I'll
I was just saying, I thought that was one of the really smart things of the script. Was you obviously, if you set it in a hotel, everyone's thinking The Shining, so you reference The Shining early on, and more than that, you have the characters living in a world in which they know about horror movies. You either go, these characters never seen a horror movie in their life, or these characters live in our world, and I think it's really good the way they're sort of.
Thank you.
Sleepwalking.
No, and that's why
they're walking almost willingly into the trap.
Yeah, and we watch these movies because we like tropes. So I just think the execution has to be specific, which goes to the Greg thing. You've seen Creepy Innkeeper before, but I think the way he does it, he has these weird, very specific pieces of accent work and looks and gestures, and I think that is what makes him not just your run-of-the-mill innkeeper guy, which I think is why it worked so well for Taylor and Amelia to play off of, because he gave him such like interesting tidbits to grab onto.
Oh yeah. Performance of a lifetime, truly. It's so iconic.
Yeah, no, he's he's most excellent. He really is. But
it's like go big or go home, and he's not going home. So big.
There was one note, like I think near the end of the film, where he's like really losing it, and Eric was like, "Let's do one more take," and he just looks at Greg and he was like, "Fire breathing dragon," and Greg's like, "All right, let's do it," and he's like, "No!" like just like losing his shit, and it just like it worked so well.
Yeah, he probably has like 3 or 4 tapes where he's either like yelling for an extended period of time, like crazy improvs, or he's babbling about some like amenities that the hotel has. And I think when we put out the DVD, we're gonna do the unedited takes where he literally just goes for 7 minutes, just like talking and screaming and ad-libbing. And I'm like he's giving it all on the table, and I'm like, I feel like I'm like getting his ear like, Greg.
I was going to say getting ahead of myself, but talking DVD extras. But this is a movie that's. I mean, have you only just finished it? Have you literally just finished editing it? Oh, it's been at how many festivals now? Just the one, or?
It just played at Popcorn Frights. We're going to really start doing more this month and next, and then it'll be on the Odeon America on November 2nd, and hopefully across the pond soon after.
Cool. Yeah, because I write for a VOD website as well, so and various other things. So it's always good to put it on the podcast and then see where else it can go. Kind of thing, but before we wrap up, I just wanted to just one thing that it's an area that hardly ever gets mentioned by people, but just the music's amazing. Right, and I cannot say the guy's name. Guillaume Amfou.
You're so close! Wow, Guillaume Amfou. Yeah,
Guillaume Amfou. Legend.
Yeah. No, but just I mean, you've worked with him on last year's Grimmfest showing from you 10 Minutes to Midnight, but also Cobblestone Corridor. Is that where you know him from as well? Is that the
Yeah, I did this concept trailer for a feature film we're still trying to do back in 2013, and we had used one of his tracks as just like a music track in the thing, and he somehow found it and commented on the Facebook post and said, "That's one of mine." And I said, "Oh my God, that's awesome, thanks for making this awesome." And he goes, "Let me know if you have any future stuff." And we just got to chatting, and we vibed really well, and he's worked with us on a bunch of stuff. And I just, every time I've gotten an email that a new track has been uploaded, it's like Christmas morning. It's a really cool give and take, and I just think it's so vitally important for something like this that it's elevates and highlights the existing material. And sonically, Amelia's like, "I need to see this movie." Sonically, like, it just
oh, Amelia, have you not seen the movie?
Taylor, you can
I haven't seen it yet. I mean, haven't seen it yet.
Well, I've got a screen.
I mean, Taylor, when you saw it the first time, it hits, right? It's really cool.
Oh, it hits. I was like because I knew the story and I knew kind of how it was gonna look and how it was gonna feel, but like the music was what was like keeping me like leaning in, like, oh shit, like what's gonna happen next, in the way that it, like Eric said, it just elevates it and helps really flesh out the world, and it's so befitting in the space and the story. And Guillaume is just
it's really oppressive and which is a good thing in the case of this movie. It's an oppressive soundtrack and also not obvious as well. It's not like, oh, here's a twinkly piano for a scary movie. We wanted it. There are like 3 distinct acts in this movie, and sonically we wanted it to be like that too. Carson and I, when we were editing it, were trying to find, the first act is like akin to The Innkeepers. The second act kind of delves into like it follows like synthy territory, and the third act is like full on like thriller, like Vacancy style, where it's just kind of like intrigue, mystery building. And I think that sonically it supports those 3 acts and makes them very distinct. And I'm just very, very grateful to be able to have music like that, to be able to just have collaborations like that, like I do with Guillaume, like I do with Carson, like I do with Taylor and Amelia, that just kind of feed and nurture this creative virus that I have. No, it's it's talking of viruses. So what's next for everyone?
In this climate?
I mean, it's kind of hard to say at the moment, but what general plans have the 3 of you got going forward? I mean, I noticed, Eric, you IMDb has got stuff that's in the future for you, or completed, or in production. So if you just tell us a little bit about what's on your slate. So
Sticking from the Woods is on my slate.
That was a short, wasn't it? Was that a short a long time ago?
We did a short version in 2017, and then we went back to the original screenplay and the original story, and kind of went back to the roots of the story, and then used that to adapted our original story and screenplay into a whole new thing. So we shot that this summer, like 3 months ago, and that is going to come out next year. And then Taylor and I are in a Christmas movie that we co-wrote that is coming out next month. That is very, very not Night at the Eagle Inn, but also like
total 180,
but also very proud of that too. And I think it's going to open us up to a whole new audience. And
I was going to say, Christmas on the Carousel, I looked at the picture going, that doesn't look like a horror movie.
No. Although
But it would be funny if it was.
Although maybe Taylor, Amelia, Carson, and I will go to that same location and make a horror movie there, because if you light it right, those horses can get pretty scary.
It was definitely under.
Horses can be pretty creepy.
Yeah,
if you play it right.
You could be onto something there. Every movie you use the same location with the same.
We've talked about.
You make a nighttime version.
You're really interested
in the location.
Kind of love that idea, actually.
Right.
like when they made this movie of the Prophet, they basically followed Lawrence of Arabia around, and they just moved into their sets after they'd gone, and they made like a movie about Prophet Muhammad, with all the same extras.
We'll just take this. Thank you so much.
Oh, you just left us here?
Yeah.
So that was a discussion of Night at the Eagle Inn. Special thanks there to Eric Blomquist, Amelia Dudley and Taylor Turner, and thanks to Ian for conducting the interview. And now that movie is going to be showing in the live theatrical version of Grimmfest on the 8th of October. That is the Friday, and it will also be included in the virtual version of the festival 1 week later on Friday the 15th of October. And you can book it via grimmfest.com. So moving on then, we've got a movie coming up that we simply couldn't resist having on our podcast, given the title. It's called When the Screaming Starts. It's a British film, and it's a mockumentary following a serial killer in the making. We're about to talk to the producer Dom Lenoir, the director and co-writer Conor Baru, and the co-producer and also one of the main actors, Jared Rogers. Now, these guys were all involved in the production of the movie, along with Ed Hartland, who's also the co-writer and the main star of the film. And actually, Dom and Connor will be present, hopefully, at Grimmfest itself this year, because they'll be hosting a Q&A after the movie. So I interviewed these guys. I was lucky enough to do that. Ian was meant to be there, but he had to be called away at the last moment. So it's just me for this one. But the movie is showing on Saturday, the 9th of October, in just the live theatrical version of Grimmfest. And to get you in the mood, here's a couple of clips from the film before I'll hand over to my past self, talking to the guys over Zoom about When the Screaming Starts.
I'm Norman Grayson, a two-time award-winning documentary filmmaker. I've achieved great success in unearthing groundbreaking stories and people living on the fringes of society. So when I stumbled upon Aidan Mendel in the dark recesses of the internet and learned of his twisted dream, I knew I'd found the subject for my next story. There are plenty of true crime documentaries focusing on serial killers. They're everywhere. But they're always reflecting on past events, whereas what I've uncovered with Aidan is unique. The chance to see a serial killer's legend unfolding right before our very eyes.
I think about being a serial killer every day. At home, at work. It's constant. This is the cinema where I work. Perks of the job. Get to watch a load of films. Horror films. I basically run the place. It's great because I get to do a lot of people watching. Work out which ones I'd kill.
Right, hello everyone, it's Dan here. I am honoured to be joined by three of the team behind the movie, which is going to soon be not premiering, but making its Grimmfest debut, because you were at Fright Fest previously, I believe. The movie is called When the Screaming Starts. It's a mockumentary about a serial killer. It's a fantastic idea, and the people I have with me are Jared Rogers, one of the stars of the film, Conor Baru, the co-writer and director, and Dom Lenoir, the producer, and Jared and Connor are also on the producing team. So, gentlemen, welcome to our little podcast. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, this is a great fun little movie. At this stage, we're not allowed to give reviews, so I can't tell you specifically what I thought about it, but I think I can give away that I think the basic concept of the movie, which anyone will know if they read the press notes or whatever, it's a mockumentary about a serial killer who's not yet a serial killer. It's kind of following a serial killer on his first journey towards killing. I think that's a terrific idea for a movie. And Jared, you play the director of the documentary, who's called Norman, and he's a wonderful character to follow towards the movie. I mean, I think I realise I'm blathering on and not letting any of you speak. I'll give you a moment in a minute, but I'd just like to say, and I think this is fun because it's only talking about like the first 5 minutes of the movie. I'm the kind of viewer who tends to enjoy kind of ridiculously over-the-top James Bondish credit sequence scored by kind of metal music. So I was already liking it, but the moment when I was genuinely kind of charmed and in for the ride was the establishing shot of Norman's camper van where he's kind of raising the roof so he can stand up in it and make his breakfast. And I thought I'm engaged by this character straight away. The movie, if we should mention, also stars Ed Hartland as the killer, who is the focus of the documentary called Aiden, or the would-be killer. And he and Connor co-wrote the script. So Connor, would you like to tell us something about where the kind of genesis of this movie came from initially?
Yeah, so Ed Hartland originally approached me with the idea, and I've been working with Ed for many years. We've worked on many projects together as actors. We've written stuff, plays, sketches, short films, all that kind of stuff. And Ed had the initial idea. In fact, he had a first draft of a script. It was quite different to what we ended up with, but he presented it to me and we just started developing it from there. I think Ed has said in previous interviews that the idea came when he was watching the Ted Bundy tapes. And he said he just couldn't look away. And he started questioning what did that say about him? And so many people have these obsessions with serial killers. And at what point does that obsession become a bit problematic? So that's where the initial idea came from. From there,
and it became the Ed Bundy tapes.
The Ed Bundy tapes, indeed. So yeah, I started working with Ed for a period of months and developing it, and just tweaks, changes, and yeah, that's how it began. Right.
It's a great idea for a movie. We'll come to you in a moment, Jared, because I think that the character of Norman is a great kind of viewpoint character for the movie. But Dom, do you want to tell us something about your kind of involvement as a producer and how the actual production got up and running, so to speak?
Well, I'd known Connor for a while and been following his work, and he's done some really great shorts, and he looked like someone promising to follow career-wise. And he came to me with this script, and it immediately sort of grabbed me as something very original and quite ambitious, and a bit outside the mold of a normal kind of horror film. And sooner or later, advice sort of turned into producing, and then you start adding connections and as much production value to the already great team that was forming, and suddenly you've kind of got a movie piecing itself together, and it kind of ballooned into this quite big, ambitious, independent film that kind of punches above its weight, really.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really good-looking piece of work. It doesn't feel like a tiny movie. It feels on par with the kind of documentaries that I think you're aiming to take the mickey out of. So it's really impressive on that level. Let's talk about the cast then, and that's where it'll be a good point to bring you in, Jared. You play Norman. I have you labelled in my head as the new Alfred Molina. I think you've got some of that quality visually going on, and he's a wonderful kind of viewpoint character to pull the audience into it. How did you approach? Well, first of all, how were you cast? I know that you have a producing involvement. Did that come before the acting or after?
I guess probably they came at a very similar time because I think when after Ed had kind of come to Connor with the script, because we'd all trained together. Quite a lot of the cast and crew, we already sort of had a good working relationship. So Ed had come to me with just to read the script really to begin with, and then he said, I think there's a character here for you. And at first I thought maybe Aidan, but then he said Norman. And I guess, sort of with that, I think with that offer of the role of Norman kind of came we kind of all need to sort of chip in on the sort of the producing side, and just that there's going to be, as independent film is, there's a lot of hats worn. So,
Sure, yeah.
So it was, kind of get involved in there and throughout the many drafts, I was kind of fortunate to be around Ed and Connor, so I could kind of see that evolution of the characters as they kind of grew through the many drafts.
So tell us a little bit about Norman, how you see him, and give the listeners a taste of the character, because, as I say, for me, that was the character that kind of pulled me into the movie, and I think it will be the case for most audiences. So it'd be nice to have your take on him here, and what's he like?
I think he's certainly very ambitious, but I think he isn't aware of his lack of abilities. I think he definitely wants to be the kind of the greatest documentary filmmaker ever, and he kind of, I think, is the only person that calls himself an award-winning documentary filmmaker as well. But I do question if who gave him those awards, if he bought them himself or if that's kind of, sort of self-entitled. But
you do see the awards, don't you? He's proudly displayed them inside his camper van.
Yeah. They do look like those kind of awards as well that you'd probably buy, I don't know, like the kind of like an engraving shop. There's definitely no, I don't know, they don't look too prestigious. But I mean, to me, like kind of like things like The Office and sort of quite sort of David Brent like in the way that he sort of sees himself a lot higher than status than what he actually is. And I just watched a lot of Louis Theroux documentaries as well and thought, what's the kind of the pound shop version of the Louis Theroux? And I think that's what Norman Graysmith is in his little camper van.
Right.
Little nomad.
Where Jared actually lives.
Yeah.
Wow, that's where the authenticity comes from. It all comes together.
Very method.
It was interesting what you said about everybody wearing many hats. Obviously, that is the way with independent movies. I noticed in the credits at the end of the film, you've got the costume designer, Alan Smithy. Do I take that to mean the costume designer was everybody brings their own clothes?
Well, actually, there was quite a few sort of charity shops and a few other kind of websites that Connor and Ed discovered that we I think bought almost their entire stock of sort of like the clearance stuff. So, but yeah, that was definitely a group effort and something that Ed had mentioned just as another kind of like little Easter egg as well. But now I'm glad you, because actually you're the first person I think I've heard of that actually has noticed that and has mentioned that. So we'll have to tell Ed.
Well, to be, it did surprise me because it doesn't look like a non-costume designed film. There are certain characters such as Amy who've got a very distinctive look, and it doesn't look like the actor just turned up on the set and you filmed with whatever was being worn. It's kind of all nicely curated and art directed. So yeah, I appreciated that.
Yeah, we had to. We did really think about the costumes for a long time. We tried to give each character a bit of a color theme, which was one to give this stylized feel, but also it just made our lives a little bit easier as we were having to take on this costume designer role. And just if we can at least nail everyone down to one color, it made our choices a little bit more simple, and it just sort of evolved. And I think we actually quite enjoyed the costume designing side of things. It was quite enjoyable actually in the end.
apart from, and I don't think this is giving a spoiler away, but the two of the characters have to wear what's called a dirndl, which is like a kind of a Swiss kind of like dress, and spending several days trying to find one that wasn't, because I think they can go into the thousands, so we definitely didn't have the budget for that, but we didn't want it to look like it was really cheap, so finding that was
Wow. No, well done there. Yeah, of course. So that actually makes me think of those two characters who you're mentioning, that I think I'm right are wearing that, and it does just make me realise that you've got quite an extraordinary cast. I think everybody's really good and very distinct. Connor, would you like to talk a little bit about who the cast are and where you've described your relationship with Ed as pre-existing. Where did you find the rest of the actors?
Well, yes, obviously, as you said, Ed was already on board to play the lead, Jared, the co-lead. So as we developed the family that Aidan starts within the film, we initially looked amongst our circles because we have a great team around us. As Jared said, we went to a drama school called Arts Ed, so we had a great load of actors that were friends, colleagues, people we could trust, and also just throughout the years working in the industry, we've met so many talented people. So it's quite easy. Most of the people, I have to say, were people we'd worked with before, and a lot of them actually came on board as producers as well. So Octavia Gilmore, who plays Amy, Yesna Tor, who plays Jack, and Carve Naku, who plays Masood. They all came on board as executive producers. And again, they were just chipping in where they could, helping out. The likes of Claire.
And I did as well as cinema customer number one.
That's right. Yes. Not forgetting Dom's starring role.
Yes, Dom, sorry, I should have mentioned that. I did notice that in the credits.
He was upset he wasn't on the poster.
I was, yeah.
Maybe next time, Dom.
Maybe next time.
But Caitlin, we auditioned. We auditioned her through Yesna Tor runs a film school called Film Club, and we saw various actresses coming in, fantastic performances. But Caitlin just had something different and unique. We cast her.
Caitlin Raynell, who plays Aidan's girlfriend Claire. Is that right?
Yes, that's the one. Yes, and then obviously we had identical twins written into the script, which we were kicking ourselves about after, because it's a little bit more tricky to find identical twins who actually suit the role.
So I assumed I had assumed that you must have written those twin roles because you knew those actors already.
No.
All right.
I mean, we actually had some quite far traveling characters as well. Richard, the cat, travelled all the way from Russia. we couldn't find a stuffed cat in the UK for a reasonable price, and they make them bespoke. So
wow,
a bit of an anecdote for you there.
Right,
Dom's become quite fond of Richard.
I have.
He brings him up in every interview.
There is a shot in the movie, not giving anything away, but like a long shot where the cat looks like it's moving. So is that a stuffed cat or a real cat? Does it have like a articulation to this very expensive, no doubt, model that you saw from overseas?
Up to you, Dom.
That was actually CGI, although I did make sure that Richard was credited as Richard the Stuffed Cat, played by himself on IMDb. So hopefully that clarifies things. But he was actually a static cat on the day, and then we used the magic of VFX to animate him.
Wow. Oh, incredible. Well, it fooled me, so that was good. I thought I was looking at a real cat, and then...
That's exactly what we want to hear.
Yeah. Oh, okay, nice. So, thinking about the movie, I think there's a rich tradition of, obviously, comedy mockumentaries, both in TV and film. I was thinking about Spinal Tap when I was watching it. I was thinking about Marty DeBurgi when I was watching Norman, but I was also thinking about the kind of classic British kind of comedy characters like Alan Partridge, the little man who thinks he's a great man, and so on. I thought that worked really well. But I did notice, and I'm going to say this carefully because again, I don't want to give anything away, but the movie gets darker as it goes along. And that's quite something when the premise of the movie, it's a documentary about a serial killer, then it gradually gets darker and darker. Was that, Connor, was that something that you kind of decided in the writing that it had to go, or did you always set out with the aim of making this ultimately quite dark movie?
I think it was something that we were constantly thinking about, myself and Ed and Jared as well. You know, from very early on, we knew we wanted to create this dark comedy. And, you know, at the end of the day, we're making a film about serial killers. So we felt like we didn't want to veer away from the more violent scenes, the blood, the death, you know. Sure. But it was something we wanted to almost lure the audience in under a, you know, full sense of security. At first, it seems quite harmless and fun. But when it becomes real, when it's not just this idea of being a serial killer, when it starts to happen in reality, the film does take a bit of a right turn, and things do turn dark very quickly. Yeah,
very much so. And I can't talk much about that because I don't want to give anything away. But it's quite striking and effective. But in the earlier scenes, you can kind of mistake it for a TV comedy. I use the word mistake. I don't mean that as a criticism, but it's it feels like that kind of. I'm trying to think of an example of a current kind of mockumentary comedy, but I'll use The Office. It's only 20 years old, but it feels a bit like that kind of thing that you'd switch on BBC Two or whatever, and it is quite charming, and there are hilarious moments. Again, I'm not going to describe it to spoil it, but for instance, the Raven bit made me laugh out loud. That was great, and it is quite comfortable. Also, of course, Dom, not to forget your starring role in the cinema patron scene. That's quite a classic moment as well. But you know, it is quite. In a way, relaxing viewing to start with, but then it begins to take this increasingly dark zone, which, you know, that's what we're here for. You know, Grimmfest is not, Happy Fest, it's Grimmfest. And the audience is after dark stuff, so it does go there. And you know, I'm sure that people will be pleased to hear that it goes in that direction. But even in the early stages where it's just really a little story about characters under the delusion in a way that they are killers. It's quite charming. I also loved the teaser trailer, which was the first thing I ever saw from the movie, in which Aidan and Claire are playing Guess Who, but all the characters are serial killers. That's you know, there's lots of wonderful kind of little touches like that. So. And all this stuff I'm mentioning is quite early in the movie, so no kind of major spoilers here. So I want to ask, though, what was the thing that made you choose the title When the Screaming Starts? Because obviously we're very excited on this podcast to entertain a movie that's got such an appropriate name for our podcast.
Well, we heard about your podcast.
That is the answer I wanted to hear. Although I did also find myself wondering, is this a reference to the, in its own way, somewhat terrifying Bros documentary, After the Screaming Stops?
Somewhat terrifying. I think it was that. Well, I think Ed had already named the script by the time I came on board. So I have never actually asked Ed if it was influenced by the Bros documentary, or there is that film which I've never seen, and now The Screaming Starts, which you mentioned.
Yes.
Yeah, I should really ask Ed that. It's only been 2 years we've been working on this film.
Well, you know, it's whatever works, isn't it?
We'll put it on the poster. We'll put it on the trivia on the IMDb.
Nice. There's always a place for everything. Brilliant.
I think they did have wasn't there on one of the earlier drafts, I think it was it Conversations with a Serial Killer When the Screaming Starts, or vice versa? Maybe it was, I think that got kind of pushed to the side, so it was just When the Screaming Starts, I think.
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Right.
Many moons ago.
But we are still trying to, on some searches, trying to knock down and when the screaming starts, because that even if you search when the screaming starts, sometimes it'll bring that film, and we're just trying
to
Google L's to.
I can understand that. People, if any cheapskates out there wanting to see this movie, it's not on YouTube. That's and now the screaming starts is on YouTube. There's lots of them. We know. But no, for when the screaming starts, you'll have to go to Grimmfest or one of the subsequent festivals before its wide release. I think we should just talk a little bit about Ed as well, because he's not here. Obviously, he is the star of the movie, playing Aidan, and he originated the idea. He's got a really nice kind of gentle manic quality to him, you know, the glint in the eyes and the kind of slightly sinister smile, but ultimately he's kind of a sad figure, a pitiable figure. And I think that Ed does a great job with that character. I don't know if any of you would like to just talk about Connor, what was it like? Well, obviously you have you've been working with Ed for a long time. What did you find in terms of being on the set and developing this character that you'd already written together about? And what was the process like for you and Ed on this movie?
Yeah, it was pretty straightforward for me because, again, I'd already worked with Ed before, so I knew what I was getting myself into, really. I knew there was never going to be any major conflicts like me and Ed have. We're very different, and the way we approach writing is very different, but ultimately we work well together. I think we have different strengths, different weaknesses, and together we make a strong team. And Ed's pretty, what's the word? He doesn't have much of an ego. He always wants to put the writing first. You know, if it's my idea over his, he'll happily cut it if he thinks it's better for the film. There's no ego involved. So I knew we would work well together in that regard. In terms of him being an actor, I have to say to him and Jared, like, those guys were wearing so many hats, producing. We said this a few times now, but, you know, Jared, as an example, would be picking people up in the camper van in costume to take them to set. So, you know, the fact that they were under that much pressure, but still had to get in front of the camera and, you know, not show that stress, not show that pressure that we were under every day, the time pressure. Yeah, they did a fantastic job. And Ed, to hold the whole film together in the way he does, I just have to salute him for that.
No, he does a great job, but as you say, it's clear that he's not got an ego as a creative behind the movie, because there's plenty of room in the film for other characters to take the limelight, for Jared's character and for others. It's a really nice ensemble piece in a lot of ways. You mentioned the tightness of the schedule. Then may I ask, how long did it take to shoot the movie?
What was it, Jay? 12 days initially?
I think 12 days in January, and then
until 6, wasn't it?
Yeah, 6 or 7. We did. We reshot quite a few bits. We decided to change one key location, which just wasn't really working. So we had to reshoot a fair bit, and then we added in loads of the backstories that you'll see throughout the film. You know, each of the sort of characters, you get to see a bit more of their backstory. So yeah, we did a few more days after the first initial lockdown, and sort of seamlessly tried to put that into the film. So I think in total it's probably around 18, 19 days.
Yeah,
that's pretty good for a feature film in this modern day. Wow, and in January as well. I assume this January, was that 2021?
No, 2020. So that was just when kind of, you know, COVID was
just before it hit. Yeah.
Yeah. So we was very, you know, we could have, you know, sort of dozens of people on set. Obviously there was, you know, masks and temperature checks and hand sanitizer stations weren't even a thing then. So it was kind of like open buffets and that. And then we went from being kind of an already small crew to having to be even smaller when it came to doing the additional stuff kind of later on in 2020 when, it had to be masked up and kind of doing all the
gun fun.
Yeah, COVID tests and check forms and that, and yeah.
Of course, but even pre-pandemic, filming in January is not always the greatest thing it's not the greatest fun in Britain. January filming.
I was fine wearing Sorry, Dom.
I was just going to say, like, there were 2 heaters in one of the warehouse locations, and I remember that people were sort of taking it in turns, just sort of basking themselves, myself being one of them, in the moments between takes, because there were moments when it was absolutely freezing.
I think it's the actors who suffered. I mean, obviously, as a director, I'm there in my North Face jacket, nice and toasty, but some of the actors are wearing, skimpy outfits, just a shirt or something, and, it was pretty cold in that warehouse.
Yeah.
Wow. You're bringing back memories for me, because I suddenly remember I have actually filmed in January as a producer, and I remember, and in a warehouse type location as well. And I seem to remember that when we did it, we only had enough heaters for one room in the building, so there was a warm room that people would go and stand in for like 10 minutes before everyone's out again, and you can see everyone's breaths and incredible. And we were supposed to be trying to make it look like California as well. So. The
condensation.
Yeah, the makeup team had their work cut out basically. But, so, well, no, you did it for a whole movie and for nearly 3 weeks. That's incredible. And
thank you.
And the result looks really slick. It's a great edit. The editing kind of increases the comedy, and obviously you've got a great musical score as well that I've already mentioned with the metal music. I think it's Michael Palmer who is your composer. There's the hilarious bit though when you see that Aidan used to be in a band, and you get to see his kind of 90s vintage music video.
That was a dream come true, I think, for Ed. I think he was getting to relive his teenage years there. But Ed and his brother Nick Hartland actually wrote that music for that music video, and I think it's been released now, hasn't it, guys? Is it on Spotify?
I think it's on Spotify. Yeah, you can get it.
Yeah, we're about to go platinum.
Burn the Witch. Download it now.
It's brilliant. It's a real highlight. Oh, nice one. Yeah, I'd shout about that to anyone. So it's a great fun movie, and there's lots of remarkable and fun elements within it to highlight. Jared, I just want to come back to you because I feel like we've kind of not given you enough space to extol, because you've obviously, as I say, you managed to create a great character in it, but as Connor's kind of outlined, you were also a production mover and shaker. You were stressed out. I love the mental image of you turning up to pick up other actors in the camper van. Thank you so much for giving us that mental image. So how much fun was it for you kind of shifting mindsets from producer to actor and back again kind of throughout in the freezing cold?
I think just it took maybe like a little, like the first few days on set, maybe just sort of if Connor was busy and Ed was busy and Dom as well, sort of people kind of coming up to you with just things about costume, where's my costume, where's kind of this, and you're maybe kind of going over the script, thinking about the next scene, and then all of a sudden it's taking off that hat and gonna go, okay, yeah, this is your costume. And so I think the first few days, we're sort of kind of getting into that, because that's, I've done things on short films and that, but that's normally a couple of days shoot, and you're not really, it's kind of, everything's almost kind of set in place before shoot begins. But we were very much, we'd do a few days shoot, and then one of the cinema location, we had another cinema lined up, and they had pulled out very last minute. So right. I remember Connor
our customer one swooped in to save the day.
Yeah. so there's always there's always a few kind of little hurdles and little challenges along the way. So you couldn't just kind of go, okay, everything's set. It was, and credit to Connor to be able to kind of be directing sort of multiple people then just have like a whisper in his ear, oh no, this we've lost this location very last minute, and just kind of keep the cool head and not be like, oh, we need to get that sorted. It was like, hey, the scene at hand, and then go out for the 30-second break you could get, make a quick phone call, and then
and a quick scream.
Yeah. Yeah.
We didn't get much sleep. We didn't get much sleep in that period.
Actually, yeah, the first what was it? The first 6 days, I think, of the shoot, we all stayed in an Airbnb. Connor and I shared a room. Paul, our sound guy, and Toby, our first AD, shared a room. And Alan, who'd just flown in from New York, he was on like the kind of a sofa bed in the living room. So it was very cozy.
Tailing everyone.
Yeah. So you'd kind of do a long shoot, and then you'd all come back and then just be planning for the next so many days, ringing people up and kind of just organising schedules. And yeah.
Again, the rock and roll lifestyle of independent movie making, it is a battle, and it's it requires great energy and focus to get through and to make a whole movie in that way. And you guys have done it. That's really impressive. So I don't want to say too much more about how much I like the movie, because that might constitute a review. But
I think we can accept that.
Well, thank you very much, Dom. It's very gracious of you. I do want to ask you guys if you have future plans that you can talk about, either together or separately.
Yeah. Okay. You guys go. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, we're always working away on various projects. At the moment, there's as collectively we've got a number of scripts, feature films, TV scripts, various stages of development. Some are ideas, some are fully fleshed out scripts. So we're just in the process now of talking to some people, getting some more projects off the ground. Some actually are. I know Dom's working on one at the moment. So yeah, more stuff coming soon, that's for sure.
Oh, brilliant. So we're going to see you hitting more festivals sometime in the envisionable future.
Yeah, so I mean, Grimmfest is our northern premiere, so everyone who's listening to this, it'd be amazing if you try and head on down, because it's going to be an amazing sort of Saturday afternoon screening, which is a great spot. And also have a look at the teaser trailer as well, if you want to sort of whet your filmic appetite before you get down. And then also we've got a couple of really big festivals in the USA coming up later on. A couple we can't announce yet, but we're also doing Film Quest in Utah, which is another very highly regarded festival. So the accolades are kind of mounting up, and it's really good, the level of festivals that are accepting us at the moment.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And yeah, the accolades, as you say, I can't review it, but the listener only has to Google the reviews from Fright Fest to see some nice feedback there. And you guys must be quite pleased with how it's doing.
Extremely, yeah.
It's just to think, like, we started off the plan, I think originally when it was wasn't really a budget at all. Like, the plan was Connor to direct and film on a kind of a Canon C100 and kind of
Mark II. Mark II. Let's
Mark II. Yes, sorry, Mark II. It's got a 4K sensor, but it outputs 1080. but just the way, and like Don said at the start of the interview, just the way this whole project really has snowballed. Like, I think none of us could envision the vast kind of cast and crew that we had, and just the way it's grown into this beautiful beast, really. And it went from, I think it has still been a great feature. I think if we shot it ourselves, but it would be nothing of what it is with the great team. Adrian Musto, our DOP, and this is his first feature. Shot a lot of documentaries and other things for like really big projects, but this was his first. And Alan Ray, our editor, it's his first feature, isn't it, as an editor. It was a really, it was very much a team effort, and a lot of kind of debut kind of for feature films as well. It was just I
I think that was what made it so good, is that there was all this fresh energy of people making debuts and with really new original ideas, and then there was, some kind of longer industry connections that were sort of coming in to add things here and there, and we were all incredibly proud of it. But I don't think we expected to be like named as top festival picks of top 10 from Fright Fest, and all these 4 or 5-star reviews coming through. Like, it was just a amazing reception, and we're really hoping that Grimmfest are equally excited to receive the film.
I am sure that they absolutely are. We'll see how the audiences react, but I think you'll find that Grimmfest audiences are very loving and enthusiastic, and think it'll go down a storm. Well, gentlemen, that's been a fascinating interview, and it's a really exciting film to cover and to discover. So thank you so much for all your hard work, and thank you for your time talking to us. So we'll sign off the interview now, if that's all right. Unless any of you want to get in a cheeky final comment that will entice additional viewers.
Follow us on the socials of When the Screaming Starts, on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and hope to see you down at Fright Fest.
That was a crucial comment.
Grimmfest.
Yeah.
Oh my God!
I missed it. You would have got away with it. Grimmfest, yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I'll do it.
What a disaster!
Fright Fest was last month, Dom.
Sorry.
It's
we love Grimmfest. We love
crazy,
Manchester.
Crazy couple of years. Things start to run into one, but no, I would promise you, Dom, that I'd edit that to make it look okay. But I'm not going to, because we don't do that on our podcast. The listeners know that it's all about Grimmfest.
We love you, Manchester.
Yeah,
forgive us.
We in Manchester are very lucky to have Grimmfest. So
yeah, they are. They've been such a lovely festival as well. Like everyone in the team has been so helpful and friendly. So
he's backtracking now, isn't he?
Again, there's a certain amount of digging going on, but yeah, I think you might be repenting for some time, Dom.
Throw me under the bus here.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you so much for your time, Jared Rogers. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Connor Baru, the director, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
And Dom Lenoir, producer, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Such a pleasure.
Cheers.
So thanks to Dom Lenoir, Connor Baru and Jared Rogers for being interviewed there about the movie When the Screaming Starts, which is showing at Grimmfest on Saturday the 9th of October, and Dom and Connor and also the star Ed Hartland and a couple of the other actors will hopefully be present to do a Q&A there. And if you go to the link in the show notes, you can see a teaser trailer for the movie as well. Now, if we move on to the final film we'll be covering in this episode, Ian and I both had the honour of talking over Zoom to Keane McRae, Christopher McMillan and Lane Thomas, who are the co-producers and co-writers of Shot in the Dark, an American film which is sort of serial killer thriller, but many other things besides. Keane McRae was also the director, and Christopher is also the lead actor, although all three gentlemen are all in the movie in acting roles. Before we cut to the interview, I'd like to set the scene by playing you a bit of the audio from the trailer for the movie. If you go to grimmfest.com, you can see the full trailer. I haven't included all the sound here because a lot of it wouldn't make sense without the images. It's a very visual trailer, but I think there's enough of it to set the atmosphere. And then you'll hear, from the way that Ian and I talk about it, you'll get more of a sense of the movie as the interview goes. So enjoy this final segment, and I'll be back at the end on my own to wrap up the episode.
Another box has just arrived at the Wallow County Sheriff's Station. Authorities asked vigilant when leaving your home. Maintain an awareness of your surroundings.
Do you feel like someone has been in the house?
The only thing they found left of Phil was 2 of his fingers in a box.
Okay, guys. So we'll just go around the table and say we're here for Shot in the Dark. We'll just go around the virtual table. Starting with Keen, I guess, because you're the person who's on that side. And just say who you are and what you did. What did you do?
I'm Keen McCrae. I directed, wrote, and acted in Shot in the Dark.
Great. Christopher?
I'm Christopher McMillan.
I'm sorry I've mispronounced your name.
No, everybody does it. The
I
best
should have
example
asked.
is if you know the music artist Chris Christopherson, just use that and drop the sun.
Right.
At the end.
So
Chris.
Christopher, please tell us about your
You just call me
involvement.
Chris too. That works.
Okay.
I think Chris is easier for people. Chris McMillan. I play William, and I co-wrote and co-produced the feature.
Great. And Lane?
Hey, everybody. I'm Lane. I play the role of Clay. I was a co-writer and producer on Shot in the Dark.
Brilliant.
Excellent. Absolutely loved it. And I understand we're covering this for Grimmfest, which is in our neck of the woods, Manchester or the northwest of England anyway. So I understand this is a world premiere. Is that correct? I haven't got completely crap information.
Right.
An actual world premiere. I think that's a great coup for Grimmfest because it's a marvelous film. And
thanks.
Can't quite believe it's a debut for just all round great movie. I mean, it's one of those movies that's kind of hard to talk about without spoiling it in terms of the plot. But so I guess we'll just start with you say up front it's based on a true story. How based on a true story is it?
That's a good question. We get that a lot.
I think this is a question for Chris.
Yeah, it was. I think the best example I give is it's like it started off as based on something that happened in my hometown, and it's more based on the rumors that were spreading about how the incident ended. And without giving away anything, I don't know if that's too vague, but we took that. And then we took elements of real life killers as well to combine into that. But it's really, we took that as its core. And I said the best example is it started off as a true story. And then as the writing process went on, it turned into Thelma and Louise riding off the cliff.
Okay.
So it has elements of truth. Some characters that really existed are real life characters and relationships. And it all took place in the one day. There was other elements that were part of it that we had to write out due to budgetary restraints. That doesn't take away from the fact that it did start from a very real place.
And I think it's worth saying that it feels very real as well. For the listeners who obviously haven't seen the movie yet, because this episode is going out before the festival, it feels like a slice of life, although quite a complex slice of life, because we've got many characters with different or interweaved backstories, which we see in a quite complex kind of non-linear in many ways narrative. And that works really well and helps it to feel really real. It's although you could describe it as a serial killer thriller, it doesn't really have those cliches. Which is
we talk about the serial killer almost as the context, right? It's the circumstances through which you see this slice of life on small town relationships and the inertia of people who are feeling very stuck and all need to move on in one way or another. And to Chris's point about the question of how true is it, this was an incident that happened in his hometown. He interviewed some people that were close to the incident, and some of those characters are very realized in this film.
Yeah, and their names are still in there. So
I was going to say it's not knowing, apart from LA, or apart from the East and the West Coast, typically, I don't know those bits of the state. So where is this lovely town that you filmed in?
So we
where
actually
where all the happy people live.
Where all the happy people live. So just so you don't ever go there.
Go visit on your days off.
I thought the characterization was absolutely brilliant. It felt like a real town.
Cool.
Not necessarily a place I'd want to go, but it felt like a real dead end.
What are you
town.
talking about? The mountains are beautiful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The nature.
Yeah. But yeah. Whereabouts was it shot where you're from, Christopher? Or
it's actually Lane.
It was shot where I'm from. Most around Reno, Nevada, where I'm from, backside of Tahoe, up and down the 395, the Eastern Sierra Nevada mountain range there, behind the Mount Whitney, the highest point in the contiguous United States.
Is that kind of near Yosemite?
Yes, actually, it's on the backside of Yosemite,
so I have
on the backside of Mammoth, on the backside of Tahoe. All of those mountain ranges and a lot of those cities along the 395 make some exteriors of the film. So
that makes sense. No, I was going to say as well. It doesn't the town doesn't necessarily look very attractive, but the actual you're right. The landscape, as is often the way in the States, looks pretty breathtaking. And I was wondering if it was New England or somewhere.
And we invented the small town of Lawton, Nevada, a fake town name in homage to Greenbow, Alabama, Forrest Gump, right? Made up town. Took a page from that book with inventing Lawton to kind of characterize this general area that is captured here on film.
Yeah, like middle America.
West.
Yeah. West America.
Rural West, the rural West, middle America. Yeah.
Do you guys hate the word flyover states that we always hear?
No, I don't. I never lived in one.
Yeah, we consider them flyovers as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So how did it come about? Because it's looking you guys up on the internet. You all seem to obviously have careers up and going, but still like early doors in lots of ways. But how did such an accomplished movie come together? Like
time.
Thank you.
How did you guys meet?
We met about 11 or 12 years ago, actually, and that's when we started working on this. And we had never made anything before, so this was our first foray, and it took so long that we made some stuff in between the beginning and the end of this process. But we've been working on it for a really long time. We wrote for 5 years, and then we've been in production and in post for 6. So happy to be at this stage.
That's a long time in post. But I absolutely it's great. It's part. I think Dan will agree. One of the great things about festivals and being a critic is you just go in cold. So you don't. I didn't even know. You don't even know you're watching a serial killer movie. I literally had no idea what it was. And then I was oh, cool, this seems really good. And then it was a serial killer movie. And then it's a love story, but it didn't sort of stint on any of the aspects. It's really, really moving.
It is.
And I would say for any gorehounds out there, it's not a horrible serial killer movie as well. So it has that element as well. For those that it doesn't stint on all those things, and it's it really is a. How did you how did you? Was that mixture always what you were always going for? Was it always going to be about the love story? And I think you mentioned that you had the serial killer MacGuffin as a sort of way in.
I think it started out much more of a movie with a twist. We had this idea for a twist. Chris had this idea. He had a version of the script. And when I met him in 2009, where this twist was like, wow, okay, that could be really something. I don't think I've seen that twist before. And then from there, it was like, how do we make this also something that people haven't seen, right? How do we not just connect the dots to this twist in the way that everybody would know or has seen in the past from a genre perspective? And that's where I think Keen took a heavy hand, and also myself. We're all from small towns. We all know these characters. That's why we played them, right? So those aspects of the interpersonal relationships.
It was also at a time when my dad had been diagnosed with brain cancer. So this was sort of a cathartic process and getting over grief. And at the same time, I had just fallen in love for the second time. So that kind of clash of two heavy emotions was sort of pulsing through me while we were working on this.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. No, I can see that. It's. I think especially for people that general audience will they'll probably see a trailer and they will see this. I think it's important for us to sort of say this is a genuinely touching film, and we can't spoil it too much. But I love just a little last scene with you at the end, Keen. It is you, isn't it, in the van?
Cool.
Yeah. I must say, you guys look quite different in the movie. And then when you have the flashback scenes, were they? Now you're saying how long this movie's been. How long ago did you film those flashback scenes? Because you guys look young.
We filmed like 6 years ago, probably. Those are the first things we filmed.
And that was intentional to do that, just in case it, you know what I mean? Because time was supposed to take place in between the two worlds.
Yeah, we knew that it would take a while because we only had so much money to shoot. So we decided to do the flashbacks first because we knew it would take some months or a year to raise the funds for the next shoot.
Sort of half accidental link later with Boyhood kind of thing. But,
yeah, exactly. I think before Boyhood came out. Did Boyhood come out yet?
Oh, we were doing it before.
Yeah.
And then it came out in the middle of what we were doing.
7 years ago, I think. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Because when you first get to the flashback scenes, I go, oh my God, those guys have really they've really gone for it. But it was just the aging process. So that's
it was real.
We actually never had people on set too. So
it also, I mean, when I shave my face, I also have a baby face, so that helped.
Yeah. Sorry, insulting you terribly there.
No, I know exactly where you're coming from, Pete.
But I was going to say about the especially with the sort of central character of William, like he really, without spoiling it for the audience, but he really sort of puts to test that Shakespeare quote of "It's better to have loved than to have lost," because man, is it. But like that whole coming back from New York thing. How much is that sort of part of your own experience, or do you guys all live back where you grew up, or what's it like when you go home? Or did you have to go home for COVID?
We all moved out of our small towns, so going back home is kind of a shock to the system, especially after not being there for so long, and then going back. I'm from Alabama, so it's a lot different from Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's I concur with what Keen just said. It's always, that's a big part of what we tried to capture in the film, though, was the, if you've ever been to those kind of towns, if you're from a small town, you've seen that person who it's like they should have left, but they didn't. And then you see the people, there's so many different facets, and you they were the popular kid in high school, they were the jock, all the stereotypes of a horror film. These characters only 10 years later, you know what I mean? Yeah. And these are the characters, and this is what really happens to people like that when they stay those people, and that's real. That's something you actually run into in those small towns. Every time you go back home, you're like,
yeah.
I intentionally don't, I mean, it sounds terrible. I love my family and everything, but I make it a point not to go home all that much. For a good reason.
I like going home. It's a lot slower. The pace is nice and slow.
Yeah, I do too as well. Yeah, I spend quite a bit of time back where I'm from in Reno.
obviously the odd one out there. Then
I think it's interesting.
I've got a great family.
I think it's interesting what you're saying. I think it is interesting what you're saying about William's character, though, because I think this is a big piece of it, right? Because it's William having left the small town, going to New York, finding success, coming back with that success that really shifts Vince's perspective about his state and his place. And I think we've all fantasized about this like sort of trajectory as well. And as we're all artists, going back home as the big successful artist and, being praised for that success of having made it, whatever that means to you in whatever field that you're in. And then we find this very interesting dynamic between William and Lily, his love interest. And we see, quite a bit of conflict over the value structure. What really does matter? Does that kind of success matter? Is the big city really better, and vice versa? And the presumptions that we make about this structure of values, comes into question with their relationship.
Yeah, it's bullet points. Most films you see that do that, they have their love story in their structure. It's usually a big part of it. Oh, the love interest, who is that? And you hear big terms used to you have to have the meet cute, you have to have these, and it's like they always do it like bullet points, but that's very, we wanted to do something more realistic, something that if a viewer watches, they would be like, oh, I know that person. I might be that person. I've seen this world. This is something that was very big. And I think that was one of the biggest things Keane definitely brought as the director to the film to really spearhead that. He wanted, there were times where we'd be editing.
Naturalism, realism.
And it'd be like, oh, let's do this, let's do this. And I'd come up with this movie line. And he'd be like, that's a movie line. I'm like, you're right, it is. Gone. Gone, like my last girlfriend. It's out.
Naturalism. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I was saying you've got. I mean, between you guys and the rest of the actors, you've got a wonderful cast as well. And just there's some genuinely. I guess I didn't really expect it to be. It's got so many great things in it, but some of it it's moving and it's got real artistry as well. There's just that. I just love the bit where you have the bit and you're, somebody's tied to a chair. There's going to be some violence, but then you sort of have that great bit with the fireworks and flashbacks and just like brilliant sequences like that. So the violence side of it is still horrible in a good way, but it's not gratuitous and it's not the be all and end all. It's not.
You said something earlier.
It's such a surprisingly thought provoking serial killer movie.
Well, I appreciate that. And you said something earlier, about the gore hounds. We definitely wanted to make sure everyone got their itch scratched on this ride, given the presumptions that you're going to make going into this movie. But we wanted to be sure that we weren't making something that they'd seen, and that's where we ended up over indexing, really into the love elements in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And we didn't want the gore to just be for no reason and just to be gory for gore's sake. And sure. That's why we popped into the flashbacks when the gore happens, because it's just an escape. It's our character's way out of that room.
The fracturing.
Yeah, I was going to give a shout out to the girlfriend. Is it Christine Donlan?
Christine Donlan, yeah.
She's I've not seen her before, but she was great. I mean, you can fall in love with her. It's very believable.
It was very easy to act opposite, Like, easiest acting I've ever done. I just have to show up.
For the listeners, Christopher looks absolutely delighted.
I gotta kiss her now. Shucks. No, she was very sweet, and she was actually very lovely, and she brought a lot of interesting ideas to the set.
She also worked with us. We were tough to work with because we had never made anything before, and we were making a lot of mistakes and asking her to come back for a bunch of reshoots.
Over a decade.
Over a decade, yes.
Half a decade. Okay. Only
it
half
really
a
says
decade.
something. When
Half of a decade. We've only been in production for half of the decade.
Yeah, just half.
That's okay then.
She's very talented, extended quite a bit of patience to us, but we also knew that she was going to bring a lot to the role and tried to give her as much room to play and be natural and bring her own voice to the table. And I think that's part of what, makes her charm and magic come to life in the role.
Yeah, like I said, my favorite thing when you work with her is she could smile and you could tell she has a very different thought behind her smile. And that was like, that's one of the things, like, as an actor, when you're working opposite somebody, you try to find the thing about a person that you can latch onto. And it was nothing to do with her looks, ironically. It was literally, oh, she has something else going on behind her smile. I like that. That's what I clung
very
to,
layered.
And yeah, it made you care, made you something to attach to.
Yeah, she seemed to make a lot of interesting choices in each scene. Like there was, like I thought it was a cracking script anyway. But yeah, but just the acting really lifted it as well. Even I mean, again, we can't. I almost did a spoiler then. But like Austin Hebert, is it Hebert?
Austin Hebert.
Hebert. Because I thought I recognized him, and then I looked him up. He was on True Blood a little bit, wasn't he?
Yeah. Jack Reacher too.
I thought he had that look. I thought he had a look of one of the small town guys. But yeah. But again,
he's a Texas boy.
Without saying who he is or what he does in the play, in the film, what he does is his performance is great as well. Like, with him and Christine, were they just straight casting? You just got them through casting, or did you know them?
Austin's a buddy of ours. We know from through acting class, and then Christine, we
same for Christine. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Christine was good buddies with myself and Mike Hoy and some of our other friends. Okay. Yeah. So, but yeah, we knew of them through our acting circles, and we're very lucky to be able to get them to go on this ride with us. And Austin does a great job, and he's a terrific working actor and brought a lot to the table in that role. And we were excited to have them. Obviously, Jacqueline Taboni as well, shouting out her.
Good. One that I was super impressed with, that I gotta admit, when I saw her, I was the most kind of floored by, not to bring up another actor, but Kelly Mack. She was one that when
that was our true audition in a sense.
Yeah, I guess she was our true audition find.
And I knew her through my acting circles, and I'd worked with her in class. But yeah, that was one where we still have that audition tape, and I remember still very vividly. That was a tape where we're like, boom, that was it. And
she could take notes brilliantly. Either she came in prep to do different things, or she was just naturally can perform very honestly. But she was another one that I remember I had to interact with. That was easy to play with. I was like, it's very easy to play off of her. She and Keen can attest to this probably, and what she was able to do.
Yes, she's great.
Yeah, I think the whole small town, the sort of the atmosphere of it did bring to mind like stuff that obviously was almost a decade after you started making it, but like the Mayor of Easttown and recent hits like that, and those sort of movies, and a bit of sneak peeks.
It's wonderful.
Yeah, amazing, amazing stuff. But yeah, it's but you're that sort of same real. It feels very grounded and real. Your movie. But I was going to say, because you're obviously, this is a horror festival. Like, is this a genre that you're all kind of invested in, or is this like, are you kind of new to the horror thing?
It's starting to seem that way for me, anyways. And Lane,
I'm into all types of movies. Honestly, yeah, I don't like stay in one camp.
But personally, it's like my next feature that we just got funded. Something Evil This Way Comes is a 1950s, 60s horror film that makes fun of the 1950s, 60s horror film. You know what I mean? Like the whole, that shooting star was cool, Bobby. And out comes an alien. And it's ultimately about a newlywed couple and a preacher trying to survive a serial killer couple, not unlike, Oliver Stone's Natural Born Killers.
Oh, I see.
Hunting them on Route 66 while also being chased by an alien from outer space. And they all just keep narrowly missing each other till at the end kind of thing they come together. It's a fun one, and it's also a political satire, so it's a little bit of a risk, but that's a horror film. And the one after that's a tiger film. And these guys are both involved.
Not another tiger film.
It's about a poacher hunting it's a poacher hunting a tiger. It's actually about a tiger hunting the poacher. Role reversal, and it's based on a true story. It's
like Jaws, but in
I was going to say Moby Dick in the jungle.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Really awesome. These guys are both involved in that one too. But Keen also has this other project he's working on.
Yeah, I'm working on one that's not a horror film. It's based in the music industry in the 1970s, and we've been watching a lot of 70s B movies like Vantage Point and Breakout. So I think it'll be really, really fun. That one's called Howdy.
Vanishing Point is is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But
it's like the horror films thing. It's just like we're trapped in the world of horror sometimes. For me, it seems like in Lane too, because Lane, we're also doing another one. We have tons of them, but they all seem to have a horror element to them. I'm like,
Well, Grimmfest will love you. And the audience are very, very affectionate. So
are we this bleak and dark? Do I have any problems in the future? I don't know.
The great thing about Grimmfest is it's I guess the horror gets people through the door, but actually it's more a cult movie with a horror element. So people aren't necessarily lining up to be. It's not just gorehounds lining up like some other horror festivals.
Yeah, there's always a good variety, and the audiences are very.
Usually the movies I like the best. I'm not much of a gorehound myself. I like all the movies. All the movies, and I tend to get a bit bored of just gore, to be honest. So I'm loving your movie. I'll be championing your movie.
I concur. The exact same. I think all of us are the exact same way. Probably everybody on this entire chat are the exact same way. It's like overdoing the gore. It's just in my opinion, a lot of times when I see films that do that, it's you didn't have something else to stand on.
Yeah. Although I do really like Sam Raimi's film. Which one? What is that one?
Oh, The Evil Dead.
Yeah, The Evil Dead.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's poetry that's gore as poetry. Yeah, you can do that.
I'm a fan of Evil Dead personally. Yeah. I'm also a fan of what he did to get it made, and I was just like, that was even inspiration.
It's an awesome movie. It's an awesome movie.
I know exactly where you're coming from, Chris. I don't look. I'm a huge fan of what they did to make it. The stories that Bruce Campbell tells about the hell that they went through to get that first movie made, which to be fair,
he lost 25 pounds, through the production. So you literally watch his weight shift in the film. You notice it, you look like, dang, he definitely lost 25 pounds.
At least we had some time jumps so that it wouldn't be that noticeable.
I was going to say, you guys aged 10 years.
6 years, Ian, 6 years.
We thought we were pulling a Boyhood and we were doing great. Like, we'll be like the first to do it. And then Boyhood came out. They did it like very legitimately over
well.
Years. And I was
like, that was their plan all along.
Yeah, it was not ours.
Not even close.
But it really, really is effective, though. It's like, oh my God, these guys are young and fresh, and wonder what their futures are going to be like.
It contributes to the sense of real life.
Their future consists of making that movie for a long time.
But seriously, I'm going to really shout about this one. I really love it.
Thank you.
But I think we should wrap it up there and let you get on with your day, and we'll get on with our watching.
Beautiful.
Getting ready for bed.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for bringing the movie to Manchester. It's an honour for Grimmfest to premiere this movie.
Seriously, it's an honour to have you guys watch.
So much.
Well, we'll love it, and as just to back up what Ian said, there's such a great sense of life in the movie, and if I may add in, I love the way that the different time periods contrast with each other visually and in terms of the characters' growth and also the contrast between the New York stuff and the small town setting. That they feel like entirely different worlds in the best way. And I think that was just all captured wonderfully. And also the sense of youthful kind of potential and the romantic possibilities you see springing up, things that made me wistful in the best way. So there's also all kinds of things going on for this movie. Definitely.
Yeah, I can't wait to talk to other people that have watched it as well, because there's a lot to talk about. Man. So obviously, we don't want to. Nothing worse than ruining a movie by being too enthusiastic. It really is one people at home really got to go and see.
Sunday, 10:30 a.m.
Yeah.
Wow.
10:30 a.m. It's a.m. or p.m.
GMT. Is it a.m.?
Yeah, exactly. GMT.
Grimmfest starts early in the day, Ian. But having done a few Grimmfests, you need the early morning films to be great.
Yeah.
To just get you awake and to get you in the mood to enjoy the day.
You're gonna love it. It's gonna be a great start to the day.
10:30 a.m. on the 10th, Sunday.
That's cool. But actually, we'll be there. I'll watch it on the big screen.
Awesome.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much, guys.
Cool. Yeah, I'll look forward to seeing what comes next.
Okay, so that was Shot in the Dark. Thanks again to Keen McRae, Chris McMillan and Lane Thomas for interviewing for us there, and thank you of course to Ian for his help in all of these interviews and in the general organisation of all this. That was a lot of fun, and there are some interesting movies there, and obviously the festival features a lot more than just those 3 films. There are an absolute stack of new feature films there. There's 4 programmes of short films as well by new filmmakers, including one short film by our old friend Ryan Kruger, who last year directed the great movie Fried Barry, which we were lucky enough to interview him about for this podcast, and then later review the movie as well. He's made a short film which is in their first programme of shorts on, I think, the first day of the festival. Again, details on the website. Also, the guest of honour at this year's festival is the great Dee Wallace, star of horror movies like The Howling and Critters, and probably best known for her starring role as the most significant adult, I think, in Steven Spielberg's E.T. She's had an illustrious career, and she's in some great movies, and she's always terrific to see. So it's great that Grimmfest have got her to come along to Manchester this year. So there's loads going on. If you go to the website, there's plenty to read about, plenty of reasons to get involved, either partially or with the whole thing. You can buy tickets to the whole festival. You can just buy tickets for one day. You can select films on a film-by-film basis. And obviously, most of the movies in the festival you'll be able to see. You have the option of watching them online at the virtual festival if you can't make it in person. So that's it for this week, the first episode of And Now the Podcast Starts. I got to apologise, I think my voice is not in great shape. It's been a difficult time for, as I've said, for most of us in loads of different ways. Me personally, my mum's been quite ill recently, and I've been spending a lot of time caring for her. So I've kind of dropped out of a lot of my usual routine things. But I'm very pleased that we've at least managed to relaunch the podcast when we intended to do. And I don't think I'd be able to do that without the help of Ian. So God bless him as well. And I know he's been dealing with his own problems, as have most of us. But we're back. So what we traditionally do at the end of an episode, whatever we've been talking about for the main episode, we like to end by sharing some recommendations of some horror entertainment that we've maybe found on streaming that we can direct our listeners to. Alas, there's not a lot I can recommend because of the situation I've been in with my mum. I haven't really been in a position to go and watch a whole movie. I've only been kind of having quite brief periods where I can indulge in entertainment. So I've been watching lots of short form things, some sitcoms and things like that. Something I have watched that fits that bill is the Marvel series What If that's on Disney Plus, the animated series. Now, obviously, if you're a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe or the Marvel Comics, then you'll probably be aware of this and it'll be right up your street. If you're not a fan of those things, but you are into horror, well, there is a zombie episode, which is about as gross and nasty as a cartoon aimed at kids can afford to be, really. So if you want to see all those kind of famous superheroes, Iron Man, Captain America, I think the Hulk, Ant-Man maybe, there's quite a lot of them who get zombified, and it's fairly unflinching, so that was good fun. The other thing I've been watching that just kept me going throughout my mum's illness so far is I just kept putting The Strain on for 20 minutes here and there, and I've now worked my way through the whole series. That's on Disney Plus as well, and I do recommend that whole show. I think if you want a kind of modern day apocalyptic struggle to the death between humans and sort of vampires, that's very much kind of takes its starting point from Bram Stoker's Dracula, but is very much seen through the eyes of one of its co-creators and executive producers, Guillermo del Toro, then I think it doesn't put too much of a foot wrong, really, and it comes to... I've finished watching it now, and it does come to what I found to be a satisfying conclusion, so that's on there. Also, I'm just advertising Disney Plus here. At the moment, Disney Plus is premiering weekly episodes of the last ever series of The Walking Dead. Gotta say, I haven't watched them. I'm still on series 9, but it's going up there every week, and also every week you get a new episode of American Horror Stories, the weekly anthology spin-off from American Horror Story, and I look forward to checking that out. I haven't done yet. But those are my two sort of recommendations for the week, I guess. What If Zombies, the episode is called, and The Strain, both to be found on Disney Plus. Next week, I hope to be returning, possibly with some of the other co-hosts in tow, with more Grimmfest promo interviews. I'm not sure what films we'll be covering yet, so you'll have to listen and find out. I hope you've enjoyed these, and I hope you're tempted to go to the Grimmfest website and maybe book some tickets to see some of these movies. Also, I hope you're tempted to go to our Patreon page and maybe donate a little money so that you can experience some of the early access and exclusive delights that we have there. We'll be adding more as we go. Anyway, so that's been the first episode of the second series of Now the Podcast Starts, and I look forward to bringing out more. So, thank you very much for listening, and, well, you'll be hearing from us again soon. Bye-bye.
You have been listening to And Now the Podcast Starts, produced and released by Ambidextrous Solutions Limited, presented by T.D. Velasquez and Ian Winterton, with special guests Eric Blomquist, Amelia Dudley, Taylor Turner, Connor Boru, Jared Rogers, Dom Lenoir, Keen McRae, Christopher Macmillan, and Lane Thomas. Special thanks to Greg Hume for our original theme music, and to Brian Gorman for our original artwork. All dialogue and music clips from films, TV shows, and trailers are used for the purposes of criticism in the spirit of fair dealing as defined in UK law and fair use as defined in US law. No copyright infringement is intended. Please visit our home on the web, www.andnowpodcast.com, for more content and contact details. Or visit our Facebook pages at @andnowpod or at Lee Cushing Pod. Follow us on Twitter at @andnowpodcast or at Lee Cushing Podcast. If you'd like to donate to us, please visit patreon.com/andnowpodcast. And now the podcast stops.